In this video, we're going to talk about enumerations. So enumerations try to solve a problem in programming where you want to have a limited number of choices, where the choice is mutually exclusive, but you got beyond two. We can typically handle two choices with a true-false. But what if you have three? Well, then it's not going to work. And so what we can do is we can create something called an enumeration. So I've created two here. We need to squint. Import we've seen before, but this class thing we haven't quite seen before. So we'll just squint and not ask too many questions yet. But I set up, well, I guess what would look like name constants to us. Line, polygon, ortho. Those were the three ink choices that we gave users last time. I did the same thing for paper, Mylar, regular, heavy. So I've set those up. Now I've imported them into my program here. There's a different style. So from the module ink types, just import my ink type enum. And from the module paper types, just import my paper types enum. When I do it this way, I can actually use short names in that to do things. So here I'm going to set my default paper and my default ink to Mylar and my ink to ortho. And then I'm going to cycle through and print out all the ink types, cycle through I'll pull out all the paper types or print them out, and then ask the user to enter a value and then test to see, is that a valid enum value. So we'll start, I guess I'll put a breakpoint on this 4. We'll start a debugging session, current file, and see where we get to. So far so good. So, all right, I've brought in ink types, so that's line 15 and 16 would have brought in ink types and paper types as like new data types. Like when you think of a data type, think of float, integer, string. So I've introduced a brand new data type that didn't exist before. And there it is, and there are the three values for ink type. And there's paper type, and there's 3 values in there as well. Now I've set my default paper and default ink to one of them. So if I hover over, I can see that it's set to Mylar and the ink is set to ortho. Okay. I also see the name and then the value, right? That's sort of stored in the background in the class. I could store the prices that we were using before. That would be a technique. I'm going to go through and print out all of the ink types just by cycling through a for loop. So it is iterable, right? So we can get the values, but that's mainly because the for loop takes care of the iteration. And I can see the values being printed out. So now I'm going to go down and I'm going to type, tell the user to type in a paper type, and then I'm going to check to see, well, is the paper type the user typed in really something that exists in enumeration? And so we call that enum validation to validate the enum value that the user typed in. And we use the built-in function has attribute to do that. So that is a way to do that. So we'll just get the user to type in a value. So enter a paper type. I'll type in my Mylar and go enter. And so it's going to, this is what I typed in, and it's going to test that against the enumeration, and it should come back as true. So has attribute will simply return true or false as whether it found an attribute with that name, and it did. So it's going to print out valid paper type. So that means it would be safe to, okay, we got a valid paper type from the user. We can use this to get a value or to work with in code, and then I'll just print done. These checks would be case sensitive, and that's, you may want to, if your coding convention is to always have constants in uppercase, when you prompt from the user, you might want to throw that into an uppercase string and do the comparison. But that's up to you how you want to validate your data. But this is just to introduce the concept of enumerations having a limited number of choices to present to a user, and then also validating that they picked one, that the choice that they entered or the choice that they picked is actually a valid one in your enumeration. But for now, this concludes this video.